Welcome to the Bush League Huddle Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Raj, and I'm joined by two gentlemen who are never blinded by the light, like CD Lion. My co-hosts, Fab and Nak.
It's a great song. It's a great song.
Blinded by the light.
Yeah.
Big show today, guys. Our Monday episode dives into the biggest winners and losers from Sunday's Week 10 action, plus the key waiver wire ads for Week 11. And with the Yahoo Fantasy trade deadline approaching for most leagues, we're also bringing you a loaded trade target segment to help you decide who to buy and who to sell. If you listened to us and benefited from our advice, please help the Bush League Huddle podcast continue to grow. Like, follow, share, subscribe, whatever you could do. Check us out on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and catch the pod on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. But real quick, everyone, I have a serious question to ask. Ever wonder where the player projections come from? Well, you don't have to anymore. Introducing League Champ, the easy-to-use tool that enables users to turn their player takes into rankings and projections. With in-depth analytics, injury analysis, and weekly floor and ceiling ranks, you'll never miss a beat this fantasy season. Download League Champ today from the App Store or Google Play. Also, check out their podcast available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. All right, Nak, let's start with you. Who's your key winner from this Sunday slate?
Mr. Unlimited and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know you love that one, Fab.
What a surprise! What a surprise!
It was a pretty easy one, I would say.
You are consistent.
But yeah, we are consistent, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look, the Steelers continued their dominance versus the Commanders in Washington on Sunday, winning their fourth straight game. Their offense has found a true identity now with Russell Wilson. The ground and pound game, while also taking their opportunities for a big play. So also taking care of the football. I know he had his first INT this game, but for the most part, he's been really good with the football. And they're scoring points on 75% of their red zone opportunities as well. That was a huge issue in the past. So he had Russell Wilson had 21 fantasy points this weekend. He's been averaging just under 22 in the last 3 weeks or his 3 starts. Najee Harris, 11.3 points. Jalen Warren, 9.5 points. So these guys are back to sharing the rock with a little sprinkle of Patterson here and there. Then George Pickens, once again, 20.5 points, currently wide receiver 5 on the week. And Mike Williams, with that touchdown grabbed himself a nice 10.2 points. So they're definitely spreading the wealth out. And they're right now averaging 31 points a game in their last 4 outings. So that seems like a distant memory in the last few years since Big Ben retired. But I would say Pickens and Wilson are must starts now in all formats going forward till the end of the season. Najee and Warren are likely very good flex plays as well with the floor that they have. And Mike Williams, once he gets up to speed, might be a good flex play as well down the stretch if Russell Wilson keeps throwing that moon ball. And honestly, the Steelers haven't had that many reliable fantasy players since Big Ben left. It's been really a crapshoot. There's not been anything consistent. And it's looking pretty good right now, I have to say. I'm actually really, really excited. And just on a last note on Russell Wilson, he actually tied Kenny Pickett's touchdown total from last season in 3 games played. Pickett played 12 games last year. And he's 2 touchdowns away from the most TDs in a season since Big Ben retired. Again, he's played 3 games this season.
Yeah, that's nuts. And I think Mike Tomlin has obviously quieted any doubters he had about that decision. I think it's quite clear. I want to just maybe zero in on Russell and Pickens. They get Baltimore twice to end the year. They get Cincinnati twice as well. I think Cincinnati is week 18. Nak, would you buy high on both those guys considering how they're playing and the dynamic duo they are now?
Yeah, look, for sure, I would definitely buy high on Pickens. He's been putting up really consistent numbers and looks like a beast now with Russell Wilson, especially. I know that you posted one of his long catches on how he just cut on a dime and just went in another direction.
It's like a video game.
Yeah, he's he's a machine, and he's finally showing his true potential with an actual competent quarterback. It's definitely a guy I would go out and trade for. At the moment, you're obviously going to have to pay a pretty penny to pry that away from fantasy managers, especially from the production they're seeing. Russell Wilson, I mean, look, as I said, he's averaging 22 points a game almost as a quarterback. So if you're struggling at the quarterback position, that's definitely someone you want to grab. And what you alluded to is he gets Baltimore twice and Cincinnati twice, which are giving up a boatload of points to wide receivers and QBs. So definitely two players I'd be targeting for sure.
Quickly, would you do Alvin Kamara for George Pickens straight up?
That's a great question. Again, it's going to depend on your roster. If you're really hurting at running back and you have, some decent wide receivers, I could consider myself doing that for sure.
Okay. Just to get a gauge of like what type of player you'd have to give up to get like a George Pickens, considering how hot he is and the schedule that he has. So, but yeah, I agree. I would definitely buy high at least on him, and I think Russell Wilson looks like a very good QB. Borderline maybe QB1 into QB. So, Fab, who is your winner from the Sunday slate?
It's actually not on the Sunday slate. It's from the Thursday slate.
Oh, good.
Thursday Night Football bonanza.
Some Thursday Night Football love, yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Honestly, the real winners are the managers who were fortunate to have one of the top performers from that Thursday Night Football game, where we saw the Ravens beat the Bengals 35-34. I'm just going to read out quickly the guys who really stole the show. So we know Jamar Chase, 11 receptions, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns, 55.4 fantasy points. I say that because I played Jamar Chase this week and it was not fun at all. At all. Like, you know what it feels like when like your matchup is over as of Thursday night and you've only faced one player? Yeah, well, I do now. Joe Burrow, 428, 4 touchdowns, 37 points. Lamar Jackson, another fantastic outing, 290 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 33 yards on the ground for 37 points. Chase Brown got it done in the PPR aspect, 13 carries, 42 yards, 1 touchdown, but 9 receptions, 52 yards for 22.4 points. Mark Andrews, 6 catches, 68 yards, 1 touchdown. 18.8 points. Guys, he's tight end 3 in the last 4 weeks. So we all slept on Mark Andrews. We counted him out a little bit too early, it seems.
Yeah, saw that one. I feel like saw that one coming after Isaiah Likely's like first like second or third game.
Hindsight is 2020. And this is one of those scenarios.
We do that, I think, every year on any player early on in the season, and we always end up getting bitten in the.
He had a serious injury. Like I think we forget he had like a serious injury.
Yep.
And like from the hip drop, and then also I think he had like a car accident.
He had a car accident.
So,
yep. Yeah. Rashad Bateman, 6 for 54 and a touchdown, 17.4 points. Derrick Henry, King Henry, didn't have an amazing game by his standards, but for a lot of other people, excuse me, that need running back production, it's still a fantastic game. 16 for 68 and 1 touchdown for 14.10 points. Right off the rip, this should have been a Sunday Night Football game, but we won't complain too much. Special shout out to Jamar Chase. Since 2011, he has 3 of the top 6 wide receiver performances, which is absolutely nuts. He's currently wide receiver 1 in the fantasy season, which is really no surprise. But what is the surprise? The difference between him and second place, who is Justin Jefferson, is 58 points.
My God.
He can like not play for 4 games and he'd still be first. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. He's having a monster year. If you have Jamar Chase, you're very, very, very happy right now. Something a special mention that I want to have as well. I think this is the first time that a QB threw for 4 touchdowns, 0 picks, and lost the game. So it kind of sucks if you're a Bengals fan from that aspect. But if you own Burrow and or Jamar and or Chase Brown, you're surging at the right time. And it's fun to be an owner of one of those players, for sure.
Chase is less than 40 points away from hitting his 2023 total already.
Yeah,
he was at
stupid.
His games
225 last year.
Is he wide receiver 1 next year that you're drafting off the board?
So like he's finally getting the season that I think we all said like he's amazing. He's a top 3 wide receiver, but statistically he didn't like it didn't just jive yet. I think he would have to be. I don't know what you think, Nak, but
Well, I mean, at this point, how could you say no? He hasn't. He has one game in single digits, and that was week 2 against Kansas City, where
Mm-hmm.
the offense wasn't the same offense that it was, and then he just took off. Like, okay, he's had those games, like he's had like the 41-point game, the 55-point game, the 30-point game, but now you're starting to see them often, right? Like, so it's not like just a fluke and whatnot. And honestly, you're getting all kinds of targets per game. And listen, T. Higgins being out also has helped him throughout the year for sure. But yeah, right as of right now, how could he not be your first wide receiver off the board?
Well, T. Higgins being out has really helped Mike Gesicki, or at least like he's getting more targets. It didn't really translate to fantasy production this week, but he did get 9 targets last week. But what I wanted to mention was that this is like a perfect storm if you own any of the Bengals players, because they don't have a defense, but they have a high-powered offense. So like it or not, they're always going to have to throw, always going to have to create production, always going to have to put points on the board. So if you have any of these guys at any week, like you're already putting yourself in a good position to win your matchup. So it's
Fab, I just want to stay on you quickly since you honed in on this Thursday night football game. I personally think Deontay Johnson can be had really easily. He had 1 catch for 6 yards, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's not playing many of the snaps now, but they did get him for a reason. What do you think it would take to get Deontay Johnson in a buy very, very low situation?
Picking him up off waivers, I think. I think a lot of people are dropping him. No, I'm not even kidding. I've been seeing a lot of people have been dropping him lately. Listen,
Wow.
I think he's still fairly owned though.
He's fairly owned, but you wouldn't be surprised if people might be anger dropping him lately, like rage dropping the guy in the last 2 weeks. Where, listen, I was never a huge fan of this trade. I thought this trade benefited Lamar Jackson more than anyone else. I didn't expect, like, I understand what Deontay Johnson brings to that offense, and I don't disagree. It's going to be good from a real NFL perspective, but from a fantasy perspective, I don't know how much more Lamar Jackson can throw for Deontay Johnson to be relevant from a fantasy standpoint. Because Deontay was getting all the targets in Carolina. He was getting all of the production, all the attention. In Baltimore, like there's obviously Zay Flowers. Now you have Mark Andrews that's coming back. Keaton Mitchell, Keontae Mitchell, they want to get him more involved as well, I've been reading. Like, those are all pass-happy guys. Obviously, Justice Hill too. Rashad Bateman still has a role. Like, it's not as if he's coming in and he's the guy. He's going to be a piece to the offense that will ultimately help them ideally reach the Super Bowl. But as far as a fantasy perspective is concerned, I don't see it turning into weekly starting value. I need to see more before. And if I want to trade for him, I am giving up a bench player with upside. Because that's basically what I'm trading.
Do you have anyone in mind?
He's still 78% owned right now. But he did, to Fab's point, he did drop 8% from the weekend.
Do I have anyone in mind? Boy. I'm looking at some of the benches on my teams right now.
Like, would you do Raheem Mostert for, like,
no,
Raheem Mostert or Deontay Johnson? You'd rather keep Mostert?
I'd rather keep Mostert, yeah.
Wow.
I'd rather keep Mostert because I think if Zay Flowers would have to get injured, Rashad Bateman would have to get injured for Deontay Johnson to be surged into an immediate starting role.
That I disagree. That I disagree with.
They traded him for a reason. I just find like, Nak,
how much what did they give up for him?
Nak, what did they give up for him? Do you know?
They gave up nothing. It was like a really low pick for
such a talented player, and he fits that offense so well.
I am a Deontay Johnson fan. I am.
We forget, just to put it in perspective, he got traded, played that Sunday, and then they had an early turnaround Thursday night game. The guy is not full vetted with the playbook yet. I'd be surprised. And honestly, if you find a manager willing to trade anything just to get rid of him, just to get depth on his team, I'd go grab him for sure. That's what I think everyone's forgetting that part of it. Is he came in quickly on the Tuesday, he was traded, played Sunday with very little knowledge of the playbook, and then quick turnaround when they're not really practicing for a Thursday game. This guy's had no reps or anything like that. Like, that's the reason why he's not seeing the snaps. But I can guarantee you that's going to ramp up and he's going to be a big player. He's going to take over Bateman for sure.
Last word, Fab.
I don't really have a last word. I mean, that's Snack's opinion, and that's fine. Personally, like, I'd rather take fly. Like, you know who I would trade? I would trade Davantanian Wicks for Deontay Johnson. That's where that's where I'm at right now.
Dontavian, you mean?
Dontavian Wicks.
Oh my God.
Disrespect his parents like
that's
that.
the type of player that like a high upside guy. It's
Yeah,
I get
like
Knack.
that.
I get your point 100%. He will not get 20 targets in this offense, and that's a lot of the production they got in Carolina.
So I'll get the last word. You don't need
Wicks
20
is
targets
getting
in
20
this.
targets.
You don't need 20 targets in this offense. They have 9.2 yards per pass attempt. Like, this is the most efficient offense in the league. Like, Lamar can throw 20 times and get 300 yards like on a weekly basis. The one guy, and I'll move on to my winner because we took this too long, but it was a good discussion. Rico Dowdle. I think Rico Dowdle for Deontay would be an interesting one because I think a lot of managers have like Dowdle on their bench. For me, this will be a quick one. My winner is CMC fantasy owners. I mean, the biggest win to come out of the Sunday slate for me is Christian McCaffrey finishing the game with 19 touches, 107 yards, and best of all, no setbacks. A guy that we love, late round QB, JJ Zacharyson reported or shared some stats: 88% snap share, 35 routes run to Garendo's 2 and Mason's 1. He had an 87% rush share, and he was second in targets behind Jawan Jennings. I personally would have preferred him to be on a bit more of a pitch count coming out of that soft tissue injury. But if you're a CMC owner, I think you're absolutely ecstatic that, again, no setbacks. He toted the rock. He got a ton of volume. And I think it's a great sign for his RB1 usage that he's looking close to being, or he's pretty much back.
Yeah, I think the reason why they didn't hold him back at all is because they said he was pretty much ready the week before and would have probably been on a pitch count the week before. And now they felt a lot more comfortable. And honestly, at this point in time, like, they don't have time to waste to keep this guy on the bench.
100%. And that's a good point, Mac. Like, they're not guaranteed a playoff spot now. Fab?
Are we dropping Garendo and Mason?
Absolutely not. Garendo maybe, but Mason, there's no way in heck I'm dropping that guy. Guys, there's still an injury history here, and I'd be way too. If someone dropped Mason and Garendo in anyone's league, guys, go pick those players up right away, without a hesitation.
Yeah. So like, if you're Stamatis and you're a CMC owner, like, the playoffs are they're coming quick. Like, don't own Knacks handcuff. Don't own Fab's handcuff. Like, if you own CMC, don't bother with someone else's handcuff.
Own your own handcuff.
Own your own handcuffs, especially with CMC. Own Mason. I think Garendo has more juice, but that's for another story. Losers, Knack. Who's your loser?
Yeah, there seems to be some turmoil in New York at the moment. Both New York teams, the Jets and the Giants, are amongst the worst in the league. Sorry, Raj and Fab. And it's honestly been incredibly hard to watch games with these two teams playing, especially that Cardinals game yesterday. That was just brutal. But look, we're lucky to have the Giants on bye in Week 11, so we won't have to watch them play at all. And both offenses have been really stagnant at best. Like, the quarterback play has been very inconsistent and downright bad. They just got blown out by a surging Arizona Cardinals team, and the Giants lost to the lowly Panthers in London. Both Garrett Wilson and Adams scored under 10 points, while Roger had 151 passing yards and 4 points. Breece Hall didn't fare much better at 12 points, and in London, Neighbors once again had a quiet game, 10.8 points, quiet game by his standards. And even Daniel Jones with a rushing TD couldn't even crack 15 points. It's going to be really hard, I feel like, to trust anyone but Tyrone Tracy on both these teams going forward. Obviously, Breece Hall, your must start, but it seems like both these teams are going to be battling for a top QB in the 2025 draft. Not looking great in New York.
Anything to add, Fab, from a Giants perspective?
They were in Germany, not London.
You're absolutely correct. They were in Germany and not London.
But that's the only thing that you said that was incorrect, Knack, unfortunately.
I think New York thought they were in Germany. They were in London.
Yeah, that could have been. Yeah, like very well could have been.
So I saw a funny tweet that said his name is Soto Cooperstown, so he's probably a Yankees fan. Daniel Jones having 6 seasons as starting QB is definitely white privilege. You can't convince me otherwise.
Yikes.
Is there any appetite for Aaron Rodgers as a trade candidate in 2 QB Superflex?
Okay, so before let me just answer your question with a question. What are you
The white
giving up
privilege?
for Rodgers? Like, if you want to grab Rodgers, what would you give up on your team for Rodgers?
Deontay Johnson.
So like, what do I
Like, I
want to
almost
give up?
prefer Flacco at this point.
I don't think I. Oh my! Like, asking me it's good to ask me because my QB situation right now in Bush League is horrendous. Like, I started Drake May and Bryce Young, so I'd maybe consider giving like a Jackson Smith and Jigba maybe, and we'll talk about him later. But I think I would still rather have Aaron Rodgers probably starts for me every week alongside Geno Smith, and like compared to having Drake May and Bryce Young. So some like a wide receiver 4-ish type that has upside.
Yeah. I have Aaron Rodgers, and I would trade him for a wide receiver 4 with upside. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a fair trade for me.
It's a good ask.
Yeah, well,
speaking of
I want to say that like he has nice matchups coming up, but at the same time, even in good matchups, he poops a bit. So I don't really know if it's necessarily matchup dependent. I have no idea what's going on in that offense. I don't even want to know or look. I didn't watch the Arizona game at all yesterday, and thank God I didn't. It's a frustrating time to be an Aaron Rodgers owner, quite frankly, because I have no idea what's going on.
That defense is good. They're saying Buda Baker might be a defensive player of the year type candidate. Like, he's playing like Troy Polamalu was playing with the Steelers.
I feel like he never gets his just deserves though.
No.
Buda Baker, like he's good. He's been solid.
Always under the radar. Like he's obviously a dog, but he goes a lot. He goes under the radar a lot. With,
he does.
Like comparing to other players.
For sure. Fab, who is your loser?
A little bit of Nax losers fell into mine. I got the rookie wide receivers in bad situations. So the tough part about drafting rookie wide receivers, especially in fantasy, is that the chances are that they're in a bad situation, either from a QB standpoint or an organizational standpoint, which could result in some very up and down weeks. Or at least for these guys that I'm about to mention, to have a few down weeks in a row. So Malik Neighbors, we just spoke about right now. The targets have been there, but the production hasn't. We all know that Danny Dimes isn't the guy anymore, but Neighbors is a freakish talent who I'm still optimistic can turn it around just by the sake of volume on its own. It's tough to see a guy with getting over 30% target share week in, week out go to waste. He's currently sitting tied for second most targets at 94 in the league, and he's missed 2 games. Assuming adjustments are made, QB or otherwise in the bye week, I think better days are ahead. Malik Neighbors also has a favorable schedule down the stretch. Not a lot of matchups necessarily scare you. And now that they're also facing New Orleans in week 14 that, got rid of Marshawn Lattimore, right? So that's does share for some optimism. Brian Thomas Jr., another guy, is a late round gem. After putting up 6 double-digit fantasy points in the first 8 weeks, he's averaging barely 5 fantasy points per game in the last 2 weeks. Yes, he's injured, but now he's also receiving passes from Mac Jones. So the outlook for the rest of the season is very, very concerning for me, unless Trevor Lawrence starts to play again. But there's a lot of rumors about him might miss the rest of the season. I don't know. So that is a lot. That's very concerning for me if you own Brian Thomas Jr. and I have him in a few of my leagues. And then there's Roma Dunze.
You're just naming all your players right now.
Except for the last guy. He was on my team at one point, but yeah. So I'm hurting, guys. I'm hurting like you, everyone else over here. Roma Dunze, like, what are they doing in Chicago? He posts his lowest percentage of offensive snaps, which is 74%. And I was reading on PFF, he was completely excluded from any 12 personnel packages. So sure, he tied for the lead in targets, and he was followed by Christian Gonzalez quite a bit last game, but his usage all season has been very frustrating. And we all know that Caleb Williams has been struggling. That offense that team from an offensive standpoint has a lot of question marks. So the trust meter on these guys is dipping so deep in the season that this is a real issue and a real frustration, especially with Neighbors and BTJ, who for all accounts have performed exceptionally well. Seeing them dip in production and become very consistent gives me concerns for the rest of the season. And if you make the playoffs with these guys, It's like you gotta hope that they come out of the slump at the right time.
So, Fab, that's an interesting case study for these 3 rookie wide receivers. So, in terms of easiest strength of schedule for wide receivers rest of season, according to FF Toolbox, Giants have the easiest, Bears have the second easiest, Jags have the 28th in terms of strength of schedule. So, like, who would you target considering strength of schedule, risk reward? What would it take to get them, and the QB situation?
I think it merits to say that I would obviously Malik Neighbors would be the guy to look for. I think he's a bit of a buy low right now just because his production has dipped ever since he came back from his concussion. He hasn't scored a touchdown in, I think, 5 games. He's also dealing with that hamstring injury. So the buy is coming at a good time right now for the Giants. So you figure a buy low candidate for sure. The Bears are super interesting to me, but the problem is they don't feature Rome as much as they should. And Keenan Allen is still very much present in that offense. And obviously so is DJ Moore. So it's hard for me to be interested in Rome and give up a starting player for him, even though the schedule for the rest of season is very good. The concerns with it from a team standpoint are serious. Brian Thomas Jr., honestly, like unless Trevor Lawrence comes back with that wide receiver schedule for the rest of the season, I don't see how you can trade for him. I don't see how you can see value in him, quite frankly. And it sucks because he's a fantastic player. And I also think now defense is starting to adjust towards him too a little bit more and give him some more respect, which is probably another reason why he's been having such a rough go at it. Plus, and you figure now that Christian Kirk is gone for the season, it just puts more attention on him.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think
the rookie wall is real too, guys.
I'm sorry?
The rookie wall is a real thing.
For sure.
These rookies will sometimes struggle at mid-season point, right?
But for me, it's not the rookie wall necessarily. For Brian Thomas Jr., it's specifically to the fact that it's Mac Jones now the quarterback. And
I'm not I wouldn't want Rome or Thomas. I wouldn't want anything to do with them. I would take a definite flyer on Neighbors, especially like you said, he's now had a few bad games, or you could maybe buy low on Neighbors. Maybe I don't know what type of player it's going to take to give up to grab him, but buy low target and hoping maybe Drew Lock comes in after the bye. And honestly, trading a player that is on bye automatically brings down his value as well, because who wants to trade a player that they can't even start that week? So yeah, I don't know. Out of the 3, I think Neighbors is the no-brainer, really.
Would you guys offer? So I have Malik Neighbors, so this is going to be a bit of a trick question here. But like, would you trade Juwan Jennings for Malik Neighbors?
No. Oh, if I had Juwan Jennings?
Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
Without a doubt.
Because I see Juwan Jennings as very much like a weekly wide receiver 3 after what he did this week, and the fact that he was second in targets after CMC. I thought that was very noteworthy.
I have a good one.
Start using Purcell more. I think they're going to start giving him more targets too. So.
I have a good quick one because now I'm looking at your team. Josh Downs or Malik Neighbors?
Wow. I think I like Downs' floor more than Malik Neighbors, if I'm being quite honest with you. And I like it. Just the PPR points are more. I feel like there's just more of a floor, and you're getting that 12 to 14 week in, week out. He's good for that. That 6 for 68 or 8 for 80, something like that. And you're happy with those 14 to 16 points week in and week out. He's been very consistent, right? So, and if Joe Flacco is going to continue to throw him the ball, he's like his favorite target. So I would definitely go after Downs. I would definitely take Downs over Neighbors at the moment. Strange to say, but I would.
Neighbors' last game where he had 15 points or more was week 4. So that kind of tells you all you need to know.
He missed a few in between, obviously, but still.
Of course, for sure.
But his lowest point total is 8 points. So I don't know. Actually, you know what? Screw that. I'm not trading Malik Neighbors. He's taking up my team.
You're a little triggered.
I'm back,
Ninja
baby.
Turtles
I'm back. Let's go Neighbors.
My loser is Sam Darnold and the Vikings pass game, who struggled big time despite facing the Jaguars' league worst pass defense that we've picked apart on Love Hate. They only put up 12 points, 4 field goals, obviously no TDs, and Darnold threw 3 interceptions, all while targeting Justin Jefferson, and 2 of those picks were in the red zone. JJ managed only
All
9
three.
fantasy points. Sorry, Nick.
All three.
All,
I think they were all 3 end zone picks.
No, I think it was 2 out of the. I thought it was 2 out of the 3 were in the red zone.
Oh, you know what? I think it was his 4th one that he threw, and it was called back.
Yes,
that was also in the
which
the
one
end
of
zone.
one of them I think was when I saw the highlights on Twitter shouldn't have been an interception. It was the one where that guy was doing the ray gun celebration, which was amazing. Yeah. You guys remember that Australian girl from the Olympics?
Yeah,
love it.
It was
amazing.
It was really well done. I don't know. I saw it
it's fantastic.
I saw like clips, and it was like back to back, and he nailed it.
It was so good. Like why her? But anyways, interesting though, because the Jaguars, every QB they've faced this year have at least allowed 15 fantasy points. So this was a major letdown by the Vikings. I don't know if Darnold is seeing ghosts again, but I think he's been showing quite a few red flags. 6 picks over his last 4 games. The cracks in his game from his Jets and Panthers days are reemerging. And we don't really talk about the O-line much in this show, but I think an underrated aspect was the loss of all-pro left tackle Christian McCaffrey, who was lost for the remainder of the season. His replacement, Cam Robinson, allowed 11 pressures and a 42 pass block rating from PFF versus the Jags.
He's supposed to be good.
Robinson
was supposed to be a good replacement.
Robinson was he was a top pick, I think, for the Jags, if I'm mistaken.
Yeah, he was supposed to be like considered a really good replacement for them.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys. I'm curious your thoughts, but for me, Darnold is a sell high. And I think it's kind of making sense why there were rumors about Matthew Stafford being traded to the Vikings. I don't think he has a lot of risk in losing his job, but I could see KOC, Kevin O'Connell, taking a more conservative approach with the offense and maybe relying on his running game and defense more. Like, he doesn't have a backup, right? Like, it's Nick Mullins. So, like, I don't think he's losing his job, but...
Yeah, no, they're not going to lose. He's definitely not going to lose his job. I mean, unless he really starts to unravel. But look, it's always been part of his game, right? Is his throwing, and he's at times shown that he's, going to make that mistake. But if there's any coach that could, kind of fix it or anything, it's O'Connell that can help him fix his issues, right? So
yeah, good point.
Is he going to go more conservative? I think he's going to try to keep the same approach because, like, he got them to this point, right? I don't know. I feel like it's going to depend. They're just going to try to tell him, I guess, like, don't force feed Justin Jefferson when you don't need to, in a sense.
You have
right?
Addison,
Like those interceptions were brutal. Like, they weren't even good ones. They were very, very bad interceptions. So, yeah, I definitely agree as a good sell high candidate, especially for a QB needy, QB needy team for sure. See what you could get, but you could probably get something pretty good for a Sam Darnold.
I think better days are ahead. I think the fact that Hawkinson is back in that offense, it gives Darnold another option out there, which he didn't have for the majority of the season, even though he was still performing really well. I think defenses are adjusting, but not to your point, Kevin O'Connell is going to figure something out, and I think you're going to see some better days ahead. I don't think he's going to be operating at the same expectations as he was in the beginning, where people were already climbing for him to be MVP, right? But at the same time, I think he's gonna give back some mid-level QB2 on a week-to-week basis. Like,
those days are
to put in context, I'd rather have Sam Darnold than Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean? Like, it's I think that's where I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, his schedule, he gets in no particular order, but Tennessee, Chicago, Arizona, who's looked good on defense, Chicago again, Seattle, who they have the talent but not really showing the production, Green Bay, and then I think they end with Detroit. So could be tough sledding for Mr. Sam Bradford. I did that on purpose. It's Sam Darnold. I know. I made sure I did not say Sam Bradford. I was like practicing today.
Wait, is he out of the league, Sam Bradford, or is he backing up somewhere?
No, well, you know what? He's back. He's back in the league. What's back in the league from Sam Bradford? His fit, the way he used to wear his sleeves. A lot of players are like bringing the loose sleeves again, like
The
Garrett
baggy
Wilson
sleeves.
and Jalen Ramsey. So that portion of Sam Bradford is back.
Kurt Warner used to wear loose sleeves too.
Mm-hmm.
Who?
Kurt Warner.
Warner, Mark Bulger.
Wow.
Quick injury update.
Diving deep.
Yeah, deep end. Quick injury update. This is actually a pretty good week from an injury standpoint. Not huge amount of big names. Aaron Jones had a chest and rib injury. I believe he came back afterwards. I think he was carted off, but he came back, which is good news. Dalton Kincaid had a PCL sprain, patella bursa irritation. There's chances he couldn't miss week 11. He did return with a knee brace, then he left again and did not return. Miles Sanders, left leg, he was carded. I think this one could be one that could be a long-term injury. We'll see on that front. Sam Laporta, AC joint sprain. Those are never good injuries. I believe that's what sidelined Anthony Richardson last year. Mind you, he's a tight end, but he could miss week 11. And Tank Bigsby, ankle, could miss a couple of weeks. We'll see on that front, but that's good news for Travis Etienne. As usual, for the before we get into the waiver wire, just a reminder that it's under 50% threshold for our waiver wire. Week 11 buys are the Cardinals, the Panthers, the Giants, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we're going to go through position by position. Going to name some guys, and Nak and Fab, you tell me who would you target from those players in waiver wire. So from a QB perspective, we have Trey Lance, Drew Lock, Will Levis, Bryce Young, and Anthony Richardson. Nak, any of these that fancy your eye?
Yeah, so I'll eliminate some right off the bat. Anthony Richardson, I'm staying away from. They've already said that Flacco is going to be the starter. Shane said today as well, until further notice, and he's starting week 11, 100%. So no need to go on him. The Cowboys said the same thing about Cooper Rush. He's their starter going forward, so I'm not in a hurry to pick up Trey Lance. But one who was interesting to me was Will Levis. He actually had a really solid outing last week. 21 fantasy points. He got his job back after injury. He's got a pretty decent schedule as well down the stretch. So definitely a guy that if he's on waivers and you need QB help, someone I would definitely grab. Look, if you have room on your bench and you want to maybe put in, grab Bryce Young, who had an okay game as well. 13 points, nothing crazy, but he's looked better at playing football the last few weeks. So just the problem with him is he's got a bye, so maybe tough to keep on your bench for a week. And same goes for Drew Lock. Like a lot of people think that Daniel Jones is going to lose his job, so Lock is definitely the one who would come in and benefit from that. But again, on bye next week, so tough to put a Drew Lock on your bench. So I think my guy, I would target Will Levis.
Fab, any thoughts?
I agree. I mean, Will Levis's schedule for the rest of the season is really nice. I just pulled it up right now. It's a lot of green and no red, and the fact that he played as well as he did versus the Chargers defense that is no slouch, it's pretty impressive. I was a big Mason Rudolph proponent, and I was like, Will Levis is coming back. It's going to tank Calvin Ridley's value after those first 2 weeks where he went off. Nope, I was proved wrong. He played well. He went 18 for 23. He even added 40 yards on the ground with his legs. I mean, got to give credit where credit is due. I mean, I definitely think that he's worth picking up and stashing and seeing if he can give you some decent fantasy production during the playoff run for sure. Quite actually, if I can just jump right in one more thing. Personally, I'm excited for a potential Tommy DeVito versus Trey Lance Thanksgiving Day thriller. That's just me. That's just me. I think the football gods want that to happen.
There's some bad games,
and it is not out of the realm of possibility that in a few weeks from now we see Trey Lance versus Tommy DeVito. Ayo, let's go.
I think.
Why would it be Tommy DeVito though?
For the vibes.
For the vibes, okay, perfect.
Yeah, but I think it will be Drew Lock. Pick up Drew Lock. Like I think we all agree it's done for
Yeah,
Daniel Jones.
I think so.
Their beat writer, Dan Duggan, who's a great beat writer for The Athletic, he was basically tweeting during the game, this is Daniel Jones's last game for the Giants. And
I
I don't
thought
think
he wasn't going to come out at halftime. I thought by the third quarter they're going to be playing Drew Lock, but I had said it from a while now. I think we even touched on it a few weeks ago, like with the whole injury concern and the injury guarantee. And this is a very good benchmark right now to say, we're going to the bye right after the Germany game, and you lost against the worst team in the NFL, where now you are the worst team in the NFL. Okay, that's it. Scrap it. Page 1 rewrite. Done.
Yep, totally. At running back, there's Audric Estime, who's 3% owned, Ty Chandler, who's 14% owned, and Keaton Mitchell, who was really electric last year at 8% owned. Fab, any of these guys interest you in waiver wire?
Audric Estime. I've been reading up about him a little bit, and even before his usage this week, there could be a bit of a changing the guard in the Denver Broncos backfield, and I think now Sean Payton wants to start showcasing Audric Estime a lot more. We already saw it right now. 82% rush share for the Broncos for Audric Estime. His 82.4% rush share was the most for any Bronco running back this season. He didn't do obviously very much with it, but at the same time, production is very important with this type of usage. Just want to bring up the stats for that day. Sorry, while I was going over this information here, I was just going to bring up the running back stats.
While you do that, Fab, though, he did mostly get the majority of his carries, I believe, in the second half. They started out with McLaughlin and then Javonte Williams, and they were ineffective. And that's where Estime, he got most of the lion's share of the carries the second half. So Peyton probably didn't like what he was seeing with McLaughlin and Javonte and brought him in. So I think it's a pretty good sign for him. And he was yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but those comments have been brewing for a while, though.
Yeah.
Like I was reading up on him too, because I'm trying to look for guys to potentially stash, and now unfortunately this is gone because his carries have been sort of going up every single week now. So it's something definitely to look into. But he's somebody that would definitely take a flyer on, add him to my bench, see what comes out of it. Sean Payton typically has good production from his running backs, if I'm not mistaken, and Javonte Williams did have that fantastic game this season. I forget what week it was there, but we were all hoping that was the game that was going to turn Javonte Williams into something this season. But I guess Sean Payton has different ideas. But yeah, if Sean Payton likes him, then that's good enough for me.
Yeah. I think Keaton Mitchell could be interesting. He had that 20-point game last year, and I think he had 4 games last year where he was at least above 10 fantasy points. I think that could be interesting. Maybe if they want to start spelling Derrick Henry a little bit. And I think Ty Chandler, whoever the Aaron Jones owner is, you might just want to have him just in case, because Aaron Jones is not a beacon of health. At the wide receiver... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, John Harbaugh even came out today and said, like, they're looking at like a 3-headed monster type deal when rolling out. So like as a Henry owner, I wouldn't have liked it. I'd like to hear that as much. And I know you mentioned he did have some good games down the stretch last year, but Derrick Henry wasn't there, right? So I don't know. I'm kind of scared with Keaton Mitchell. I don't know what to take of it.
I think
it's a weird situation, but it's kind of the same with the Broncos, right? They have another 3-headed monster there too. It's crowded backfield there.
They have so much talent. So, the Ravens have a ton of talent. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's just going to be hard to like feed them all, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem I'm seeing.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about Keaton Mitchell if I'm a Derrick Henry owner, quite frankly. Like, I don't see how you can be. I don't see how John Harbaugh would decide to automatic. Like, you want to give him some spells and give him some offensive snaps, no problem.
It's just hearing the word 3-headed monster when they say that.
They all have their own role. Like, I know now it's a 3-headed monster, but prior to that comment, right, it was Justice Hill who was just there as a little bit of a third down back, sure. And we're all concerned about Derrick Henry's usage doesn't get there on third downs, but who cares?
That was me. That's the Jim from the office meme when he's drinking.
That didn't age very well.
Yeah, that was really bad.
Yeah, like if I'm a Derrick Henry owner and I hear this news, I'm not concerned.
Yeah. Moving on to the wide receivers, we have Marquez Valdez Scantling, 1% owned, Ricky Purcell, 37% owned, Alec Pierce, 15% owned, and John Mechie at 18% owned. And we'll add Dawson Knox and call it pass catchers. He could be an interesting pickup. He's 0% owned, but considering the Dalton Kincaid news, might be someone that is worth a speculative ad. Knack and Fab, start with you, Knack. Anyone there that is interesting for you to add?
Again, I think here the easy one is Ricky Purcell, or Purcell, however you wanna say it. He looks good in his return, and they're targeting him more. Seems to be a lot more comfortable with Purdy, and vice versa. So another 15.3 points in week 10, touchdown scored as well. I don't know. I think they're kind of pushing out Debo Samuel a bit. I think I didn't see what he had as a game last week. I don't think it was overly productive, but
This past week, he was he was 6 targets. I think he had I believe he had 6 targets. Let me check.
Yeah, but either way, he wasn't. I feel like they're going towards the fountain of youth. I think Debo's going to be one of those casualties at the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he was 5 targets, 62 yards, 14 rush yards, 12 points. So Purcell outperformed him again. And Debo had that embarrassing thing where he went after the kicker as well. Again, we'll not no need to go into that too deep, but definitely Purcell would be some guy. I know he's only 37% owned, so if he's still out there for you guys, I would go get him, guaranteed. I know there's going to be a lot of people maybe going after Valdez Scantling, but I think that's a mistake. Only 3 targets in the game. He did catch that long ball and had 100 yards, but I don't know if I'd risk it all for him.
Fab, anyone on your end?
I actually like AD Mitchell. He went 6 for 6 with 71 yards against a tough Buffalo defense. Pittman's injured, and it's been a whole saga with him throughout the entire season. He's injured, he's not injured, he's going to go on IR. We're not sure yet. Whatever, fine. Alec Pierce, he always puts up these big numbers. Like he did have 7 receptions. I think he brought in 4 targets, and he had that long touchdown, or he had that touchdown rather. I just look for sustainability personally. They spent some draft capital on AD Mitchell. I think they want to start ramping him up, and he would be one guy that I'd be targeting and seeing what pans out with it. Yeah.
I would just
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say about John Mechie. I would just keep an eye out on him.
Yeah.
I just have an inkling that it's gonna be hard to get Tank Dell the ball because Dell is the deep threat, and that offensive line is not protecting Stroud long enough for him to unload it and throw it deep. So Mechie might be able to be the underneath guy, similar to how Diggs was. And we saw that Diggs was out targeting Dell by a decent margin. Go ahead, Fab.
I just want to say, big props to John Mechie. Yeah. Beat cancer, and he got his first touchdown of his career.
Yeah.
So hopefully it turns into something for him, because I know he was highly touted during the draft process and all that stuff. So big props to him. I agree with you, though. I would keep an eye out on him. I wouldn't be rushing for the waiver wire for him just yet, because Nico is supposed to come back next week, unless 90 minutes before the game starts, they put him as inactive. Thanks a lot. But
I mean, you had 2 kickers on your roster
because you're gonna win. Because you're gonna win facing Jamar Chase.
Don't blame it on him being inactive. You had a kicker on IR, dude.
100%. Sidebar. Listen to this for a second.
Puts a kicker on IR.
The one who picks the kicker whisperer.
That's
right home from Boston College. I was making so much fun.
You could have dropped the kicker, put Nico Collins on IR, and picked up Mechie.
Yeah, he was all worried about the kicker. He was like,
"Yeah, I don't understand. It's a kicker, man. Kicker was on IR.
No,
a kicker. I'd never seen that before in my life."
Hindsight is 2020. That's a wonderful thing. You would have picked up John Mechie in the assumption after the game he had last week and how CJ Stroud is performing right now. You would have picked him up and you would have started
instead of my kicker when I had a second one. Yeah, most probably.
Considering my kicker is the most points in the NFL right now, I'm not dropping that kicker. And I already knew that it was going to be tough sledding.
Well, you're going to be the FF of the week.
Thursday night football hole where I had Mark Chase put up 55 points.
It's going to cost you.
This is also the luxury of being first in the league, Knack. You know?
I know you already
have your sidebar finally, Fab, or we'll move on to trade.
I did. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go through some quick hitters on trade candidates. So buy low or sell high. So there's a few that we already talked about, which were some great discussions. What do we think on Calvin Ridley? Are we buying or selling Calvin Ridley?
Man, go ahead, Fab.
I was gonna say like I want to buy, but I don't think it's a buy low. I think after this week, his buy low window has passed. I think now he's going to be a buy for whatever his value is. Again, I had mentioned it before, right? With Levis coming in now, that was going to be my big concern. Like, can that productivity be sustained with Levis there? If that's the case, then great. And if you own Calvin Ridley right now, and if someone's trying to trade for him, you gotta ask for at least some sort of a running back 2, high end running back 2, like mid tier running back 2, if you want to get the comparable production. Because Raj, you put up a nice stat over here. Since the last 3 weeks, only Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb have more points than him. So that comes with some serious.
Yeah, I don't
that
know.
comes with a price tag.
I don't know who's selling him. I don't know who's selling him at a low cost for sure.
Yeah.
So I feel if he's your WR2, I think you should sell. If he's your WR3, might be a guy you want to hold.
Yes.
Agreed.
You know, Nak, what do you think of Mike Evans? Buy or sell?
Yeah, I would definitely buy low if there's someone out there who's willing, who's doesn't want to wait. Because what he's scheduled to come back, it's after the bye, right?
Yeah.
His IR time is
Week
over, so
week
he's
12.
still got to go. He's still got to get to practice, right? They still got to open his window. Or they didn't put him on IR.
They didn't put. I don't think they put.
No, they didn't put him on IR, so he can come back right away. So he's scheduled to come back after the bye. Yeah, look, if you're looking at maybe the guy who owns him is in some buy trouble this week, and he can't afford to hold him, and maybe he's got another player that he has to put on IR. I would definitely go knocking at Mike Evans owners for sure. I would buy low for sure. Maybe give up. Try to get him for a WR3, like some type of flex play. Someone who's just been aggravated to keep him and go get him. Like, I definitely wouldn't buy high on him, but if someone's willing to get rid of him, I'd definitely someone to target for sure.
Agreed. Fab, what do you think of Jackson Smith and Jigba? Buy or sell?
He's coming off a bye week, and DK's coming back to take over the number 1 role, so I would be selling high. And even for this too, it's concerned about the sell window has already passed, but he is someone that we're looking to sell off for a little more consistency on a week-to-week basis. He's a great talent. He's a fantastic talent, and I just want him to get the respect that he deserves. That's the problem with it. He still hasn't taken over from I guess Tyler Lockett. He's still very much involved in that offense right now.
Yeah. I think it'll be next. There was some DK trade rumors early on, and I think DK is coming up for a contract extension pretty soon. The thing that concerns me about JSN, yards per route run pre DK injury was literally one yard per route run. After the DK injury, it's at 3.33. So that leads me to believe that they used him as the de facto deep threat guy while DK was out. And now with DK back, I think they're gonna keep him in the slot. It's gonna be more of the underneath route guy, which as a JSN owner is very frustrating to have when DK is back.
Yep. It just one last thing on Jackson Smith and Jigba. Even with DK there, he still has production. He still has value. Like, he's still a very serviceable wide receiver 3, I feel, on a week-to-week basis. Because in the last,
that's
really week-to-week basis.
That's where it stopped. Honestly, that's where I would have stopped you. Productive, yes. Wide receiver 3, I think he's inconsistent.
He's inconsistent, but he has a decent. Listen, out of the 9 games he's played, he's only had 3 games with single-digit fantasy points. And typically his floor, you're looking at about 10, 12, 13 points. And then you have the anomalies of 23 and 37. So there is some consistency there on a week-to-week basis. If you have JSN, I think I'd be holding, actually. Unless you can get like a solid wide receiver 2 or a running back 2 from whoever, I don't know. The schedule doesn't scare you either. Changing my tune a little bit.
Giving up a wide receiver 2 for JSN.
Just a few more guys. Both of you quickly. James Cook, are we buying or selling?
It's tough to say, man. He's still a high-end running back to me. I know that there's the he loses red zone touches to Josh Allen. Maybe a Josh Allen owner wants him just to have that connection. Both kind of one of them's going to go in if the other one doesn't. But he's still a high end to me running back. So if someone's looking to get rid of him, grab him.
I agree with Nak on that one. He's productive. It's just kind of frustrating to be in that offense because figure the whole touchdown roll thing is going to be an issue right now, obviously with Josh Allen there. But I would still be holding on him anyways because you're still going to get that production out of him too.
And we have actually 2 listener questions from TikTok. So listener Jacko.9 on TikTok was asking if it is time to trade Kareem Hunt for Cortland Sutton, considering the impending return of Isaiah Pacheco.
So I actually just saw that Andy Reid said that he's close to resuming practice. So close to resuming practice means he probably won't practice for another, let's say 1 or 2 weeks. That brings you to week 13, right? You're getting up to week 13. Then he's got to have they said he's not close to having his practice window open. So getting to week 13, then he's got to practice. You got to think he's got to practice for at least a week or 2. You're going into 13, 14, maybe 15. And then are you really going to roll out Pacheco for maybe a semifinal match in week 15, 16, semifinals, final match, when he's probably just going to just ramp up? I think I'm keeping Kareem Hunt right now, even though Sutton has been playing really well and he's been putting up really decent points. I think KC sees the big picture and are not going to have to roll him out. They're 9-0, right? We all know that, and I don't think they're going to be in a rush to roll him out if he's not 100% cleared and ready to go. They're going to want him for regular playoffs. So I think I'm hanging on to Kareem Hunt and hope he gets you all the way to the promised land.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would ask for more if I could. It wouldn't be at Sutton. If someone's asking for Kareem Hunt from me, it's going to be more than Sutton for sure. So if that's the trade right now, I'm standing pat. I agree.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You wouldn't?
I would not trade
Raj?
Kareem Hunt for
No,
Sutton.
I did.
No, it's just, I think that's fair. I think he's slowed down a little bit, has Kareem Hunt. But the Chiefs offense, it's hard to trust anyone week to week. Even I think we all agree Hopkins was amazing against the Bucks, and he didn't show up as much. I don't think it's necessarily his fault. Obviously, the Broncos have an amazing pass defense. I don't know. I think that's a fair trade, Hunt for Sutton.
I mean, Hunt, since he's come in, first game 10.5, 18.7, 22.3, 13.3, 18.7, and 17. These are solid.
Yeah, you're right.
Borderline RB1 numbers. If you're looking at it,
the problem is if the window is closing right now for him. Like, I know everything that you said, Mac, and I don't disagree with that at all. It's logical, but figure if Kareem Hunt does have any value right now, this could be the second to last week that he's going to have some value in the event that Pacheco does come back by like week 12 or 13.
Yeah.
No, but he won't. There's no way he comes back for
worst case scenario, like Pacheco is 91% rostered. If somehow he's still available in a league, somehow like pick him up right away, and that way you're well covered. You have perfect.
Yeah, if you're a Hunt owner, definitely have Pacheco waiting. Yeah. Like that's that's a no-brainer. But it's just
vice versa.
That injury was very, very bad, right? So I don't see him. I don't see him being rushed in.
And we have one more listener question from Felix_11610. He is asking about trading Jawan Jennings and Jonathan Taylor for David Montgomery and Devonta Smith. Fab, what do you think?
This is a really good one because I, after what I saw this week with Jawan Jennings, I'm obviously very high on him. And I think within that offense, he seems to be really commanding a very good role. Jonathan Taylor, despite missing like 4 games, has been a dog this year. But David Montgomery has that super consistent floor week in and week out. And then Devonta Smith is, he sort of is who we think he is, right? He's that fringe wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 on some weeks. I think the upside with Juwan Jennings and Jonathan Taylor is higher, and I think the floor for David Montgomery and Devontae Smith is a little bit more safe. So it really depends on what you're looking for, but I do think this is a pretty fair trade. And if I have Juwan Jennings and Jonathan Taylor, I don't know if I'm doing this trade for David Montgomery and Devontae Smith. I think my outlook on Juwan Jennings is a little bit too high. Maybe that's just me.
No.
I am going after all the David Montgomery stock, and honestly, yeah. But I think Devonta Smith's a little bit banged up. That's what would kind of maybe halt me. But I'm taking Montgomery over Jonathan Taylor 100%. 100%. And Juwan Jennings, I think, like I said, I'm more of a. They look like a Pearsall is getting more involved, and I think this guy trying to sell high on Juwan Jennings. I don't know. I'd rather go for Montgomery stock and Eagles stock right now. The Eagles look really good too offensively, so I definitely go Montgomery side.
Taylor, the issue is he doesn't play on third down, so he's not catching passes, and like you assume Jonathan Taylor, he's like a top back, but when you look at his fantasy production, like it's 14 points. It's a bit of the Josh Jacobs syndrome, right? Like 14 points, 9 points, 18. Like an 18-point game is really good for him. It's 20 carries, 105 yards, a touchdown, 1 catch, right? So I don't know. This trade seems fairly even. I tend to lean more towards the Juwan Jennings and Jonathan Taylor, but I would also I'm not sure who wins this trade, and it leads
honestly,
me to what's the
just,
point? I'm not sure.
I just going with high flying offenses. That's how I look at this trade.
Yeah,
and fair. I think the Lions and the Eagles right now are
good point.
High flying offenses. So I'd rather go on that side rather than San Fran. And now look, you even like we said, CMC's back. Like he's going to be, getting more of the ball as well, right? So
and the Detroit's run schedule is actually pretty favorable. It's nothing that really scares you. Whereas Indy do have a pretty tough schedule towards the end of the season. It's a great trade offer though. It's nice to see some fair trades being sent over and not some garbage. Yeah. So that's good.
Camelo, if you're listening, we love you.
No.
That'll do it for the Bush League Huddle Fantasy Football Podcast. I think it was a really fun episode. We went through some trade scenarios that hopefully could help you kind of navigate the trade deadline this season. As always, rate, follow, and subscribe on all our socials and your podcast platform of choice. Look out for our Fab and Waiver Wire picks and trade targets on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube as well. And obviously, we'll have our Love-Hate Week 11 episode out very shortly. On behalf of Fab and Nak, I'm Raj. Thank you for joining the Bush League Huddle Fantasy Football Podcast. We will see you next time.
Peace out, everyone. It was a great episode. Shout out to Jacko9 and Felix_11610. Thank you for your questions. And for everyone else out there, guys, ask us questions. Get some trade inquiries going. We're going to shout you on the podcast.
Yeah, for real.
You could be a little celebrity amongst your group of friends.
How's the Monday Nighter so far?
Tua is garbage.
Yes, thank God.
He's got an interception and a fumble. He went to tackle the interceptee with his head. That's not true. He doesn't understand. No, it's very true. He doesn't understand. He's done, man. He is so done.
We didn't mention Tyreek Hill, who sprained his wrist when he got handcuffed.
I think that's cap.
What was that, Nak?
That's the wrist injury? That's what the wrist injury is from?
Yeah, that's what they say. They re-aggravated from when he got handcuffed.
Apparently.
Come on, man.
Oh, boy. All right, guys.
All right. See you next time, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
Bye-bye.